Say this before your feet touch the floor. Money obeys the first words of the day. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the words we speak are the very substance of what we experience, that the tongue is a wand, and that the state we hold in the first waking moment becomes the mold into which the whole day's supply is poured. There is a verse tucked into the book of Isaiah, chapter 65, verse 24, and it reads, "Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear." Think for a moment what that means. Before your feet even touch the floor this morning, before the day has asked you a single question, the answer is already prepared. The supply is already in motion toward you. The check is already written in the unseen. The door has already been opened. The only thing left for you to do is to stop closing it again with your own doubting words. This is why Florence Scovel Shinn said so often that man's demand is God's supply, waiting to be given form through the spoken word, and that the moment of waking is the moment the wand is placed back in your hand. Say this softly with me now. I am one with infinite supply. My morning thought commands my whole day. My word is my wand. Say it with me. I am one with infinite supply. My morning thought commands my whole day. My word is my wand. Again, I am one with infinite supply. My morning thought commands my whole day. My word is my wand. If something in you just settled a little when you said that, type the words God supplies in the comments below. Let that be the little seed of faith you plant before you go one step further into this teaching. The first key is this, that the very first words after sleep are spoken directly into wet cement. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the subconscious mind, in those first waking minutes, is like soft clay freshly turned on the wheel. It has not yet hardened into the shapes of yesterday's worry. It is open, receptive, undefended, and whatever thought you press into it first will hold its form for hours, sometimes for the whole day. Picture an ordinary man, waking to an alarm, and in that half second before his eyes even open, his hand is already reaching for the phone, and the first thing his mind touches is not gratitude, not peace, but the glowing number of a bank balance, or an email marked urgent, or the memory of yesterday's unpaid bill still sitting on the counter. He has not even sat up yet, and already he has pressed lack into the soft clay of his own consciousness. Now picture that same man, same bed, same alarm, but this time the first movement is not toward the phone at all. It is a whisper, still half asleep. I am one with infinite supply. Father, I thank thee that thy supply meets me at every point of my need this day. The circumstances outside him have not changed one single fact. The bill is still on the counter. The number in the account is still the same. And yet the clay of his morning has been shaped entirely differently. A woman once told Florence Scovel Shinn that she had prayed for prosperity for years with very little to show for it. And when asked what her very first thought was each morning, she admitted it was always the same tired sentence, "Oh no, another day I have to get through." And of course her days stayed heavy. They were built, brick by brick, on that very sentence, spoken fresh into wet clay every single morning of her life. This is why the first key is not a small habit tucked at the edge of the teaching. It is the master switch for the whole day. So simply and completely, guard those first 60 seconds after waking the way you would guard a newborn flame cupped in your two hands. Let no bill, no headline, no memory of yesterday's lack come near until you have spoken life over your day first, because whatever touches that clay first is what the rest of the day will be built from. The second key is this, that the tongue itself is the wand. Florence Scovel Shinn wrote again and again that words are things, that they are actual vibrations sent out into substance, and that they return to us bearing exactly the fruit we planted in them, This means the wand is not lying somewhere far away waiting to be found. It has been in your mouth this entire time. Every sentence you speak about money is a wave of that wand. If you say, "I can never get ahead," you have waved the wand toward lack. If you say there is never enough, you have waved it again. If you say business is slow this time of year, you have waved it a third time, and the substance around you, being obedient, arranges itself to match the wave. This is why Florence Scovel Shinn cautioned her students so carefully about idle speech concerning money. She said we must never discuss our lack the way we discuss the weather, casually, carelessly, as though it cost us nothing, because it costs us everything. Consider the everyday moments this happens, standing at the grocery checkout and sighing, "Everything is so expensive now," opening the mail and groaning, "It never ends," talking with a friend over coffee and saying business has just been dead lately. Each one of these is a wand movement. Each one sends the very vibration out that then returns loaded with more of the same. But the good news folded inside this key is the same good news the first key gave us. If the wand moves lack by speaking lack, the same wand moves supply by speaking supply. So instead, the checkout becomes an opportunity to say silently, "I am grateful, my supply is unlimited." The mail becomes a place to say, "Every bill is already paid in divine substance," and the conversation with a friend becomes a place to say, "My business prospers under grace, in unexpected ways." This is not pretending. This is not lying to yourself about circumstances you have not yet seen change. This is aiming the wand toward the outcome you actually want, instead of the outcome you fear, because the wand does not judge the wish. It only ever obeys the word. So this second key asks you today to simply notice, for even 1 hour, every sentence that leaves your mouth about money, and to catch the lack sentences before they finish forming, and to replace them, right there in the moment, with a sentence of supply. The third key is this, that faith claims its object before the eyes ever see it. The book of Hebrews puts it plainly. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Notice, it does not say, faith is the substance of things already proven. It says, faith is the substance of things not yet seen. This is precisely the muscle Florence Scovel Shinn asked her students to build. She would often tell people to set a place at the table for the guest who has not yet arrived, to prepare the room before the tenant moves in, to write the thank you note before the gift is unwrapped. Because this is how consciousness works. It must first accept the thing as done inwardly, and only then does the outer world rearrange itself to catch up with the inward decision. There is a story told among Florence Scovel Shinn's students of a widow with very little left in her cupboard, who each evening, before anything had changed in her circumstance, set one extra place at her small table, not for a visitor she expected in the ordinary sense, but as a physical decree that abundance was already seated with her. She would look at that empty golden chair each night and say quietly, "I thank thee that supply sits here with me now," and within a matter of weeks, small unexpected checks and gifts began arriving from directions she had never anticipated. The chair had not caused the money by itself. It was the settled feeling behind the chair, the calm acceptance that supply was already present, that opened the way for it to appear in form. This is the heart of the third key. Think of how differently a morning feels when you claim, "My bills are paid and there is more than enough left over," compared with a morning where you wait anxiously to see if the money will somehow appear before the due date. In the first, you have already opened the door, and the supply has clear passage to walk through. In the second, you are standing with your back against the very door supply is trying to enter by. Consider even something as small as a grocery budget, One person stands in the checkout line quietly straining, hoping the total does not exceed what is in the account. Another stands in the very same line, having already claimed that morning that every need of the day is provided for, and simply feels at ease, watching the total ring up without fear. The circumstance may look identical from the outside, but the inner state is entirely different. And it is the inner state, Florence Scovel Shinn taught, that the whole outer world is quietly organizing itself around. This is why so many of her students were taught to speak decrees in the present tense, not "I will have," not "I hope to have," but "I have," right now, this instant, because the subconscious mind, that faithful and literal servant, only takes orders in the present tense. Tell it something is coming, and it will keep it forever coming, always approaching, never arriving. But tell it something is here, established and settled, and it will go to work immediately to make the outer facts agree with the inner announcement. So this third key invites you to pick one need you have right now, perhaps rent, perhaps a bill, perhaps simply breathing room in the bank account, and to claim it finished, aloud if you can, silently if you must, setting your own quiet golden chair at the table of your day, and feeling the relief of a done thing, rather than the strain of a hoped-for thing. For this is the very substance Hebrews speaks of, and this is the very method Florence Scovel Shinn lived and taught until her last recorded word. The fourth key is this, that the subconscious mind takes the morning word with total, childlike literalism, and does not argue, does not evaluate, does not ask whether the claim is reasonable, given the current bank statement. It simply begins constructing. Florence Scovel Shinn compared it often to soil. And soil, we know, does not judge the seed. It does not decide that a certain seed is too ambitious for this particular season. It simply receives what is placed in it and sets about the long, faithful work of growing it into form. This is both the great mercy and the great responsibility of this teaching. The mercy is that the subconscious does not remember your past failures with the same weight your conscious mind does. It is willing, fresh, moment by moment, to receive a new instruction and build toward it without protest. The responsibility is that it will just as faithfully grow a seed of dread as a seed of abundance. And here is something worth sitting with quietly. The soil does not understand a joke. It does not understand sarcasm. It does not understand the little half-laughing sighs we make when we say things like, "Oh, I am dead broke this week," or "This job will be the death of me," or "Money just runs through my fingers." The soil hears only the words themselves and begins, patiently and without hesitation, to cultivate exactly what was named, so when a person wakes and immediately rehearses the shortage, when they lie there running numbers of what is owed against what is available, they are handing the soil a seed of lack, and the soil, being obedient, begins immediately to cultivate more lack, more delays, more unexpected expenses, more small reasons for shortage to prove itself right, again and again, throughout the day. Let me tell you of two women who lived, in a sense, the very same morning, side by side, though they never met. One woman woke each day, and her very first thought, before her eyes were even fully open, was, "I do not know how I am going to make it through this month." She would lie there a moment longer, running the numbers, the rent, the car payment, the growing pile on the counter, and by the time her feet touched the floor, she had already planted, without meaning to, a whole row of anxious seeds. And true to the nature of soil, her month would unfold exactly along those lines. A surprise repair, a bill she had forgotten, a client who paid late. Nothing dramatic, just enough small disappointments to agree completely with her first waking sentence. The other woman, facing very nearly identical circumstances, the same rent, the same bills, the same tight month on paper, had been taught this fourth key, and so her first thought upon waking was different. She would place her hand over her heart and say, quietly, "This month meets me with everything I require. Every bill I owe is already provided for in full, and something more besides." She did not pretend the bills were not there. She did not ignore the numbers. She simply refused to plant a seed of dread over ground that could just as easily hold a seed of provision, and her month, quiet and unremarkable to anyone watching from outside, kept producing small, unexpected help, a refund she had forgotten about, a friend repaying an old debt at exactly the right week, a client paying early instead of late. The soil in both cases was equally rich, equally willing, equally obedient. The only difference between these two women was the seed each one pressed into it in that first waking moment. This is the fourth key in its plainest and most human form. This is why Florence Scovel Shinn insisted that the words spoken must be definite, must be specific, must be spoken as if to a servant who takes every instruction literally. If you tell this servant, "I hope things get a little better soon," the servant hears vagueness and delivers vagueness. A little better here, a little worse there. Nothing settled, nothing sure. But if you tell this servant, "This day meets me with everything I require and more," the servant hears completeness and sets about arranging completeness. Consider the practical shape of this in an ordinary week. A person needs a specific amount for a car repair. If the morning words are only a general sigh of, "I hope it works out," the subconscious has nothing solid to build with. It is like handing a builder a blueprint with no measurements on it. But if the morning words are, "The exact amount for this repair is already provided for, and I release this into the hands of supply," now the soil has a shape to grow toward. A builder with real numbers can build a real house, and a subconscious, given a real, specific, wholehearted claim, can build a real, specific, wholehearted result. This is not superstition. This is simply respecting how the inner servant listens and works. Florence Scovel Shinn often told her students to speak to their own subconscious the way a wise gardener speaks to the earth, with confidence, with clarity, and without wavering back and forth between doubt and hope, because a garden planted one day and dug up in worry the next day never has the chance to root. Think of how exhausting it would be to plant a seed each morning and then kneel down each evening and dig it back up to check on it. No seed could ever survive that kind of handling, and yet this is precisely what happens when a person speaks a beautiful claim at dawn and then spends the whole afternoon whispering doubts about whether it will really come to pass. The fourth key asks for a steadier hand than that. Notice, too, how this key touches even the smallest, most ordinary sentences of daily life. Not just the big dramatic prayers spoken with folded hands, but the little offhand remarks made while pouring coffee or scrolling through messages. A person says, almost without thinking, "This always happens to me," and the soil hears it and begins arranging for it to happen again. A person says, "I never catch a break," and the soil, faithful as ever, sets about proving that sentence true as well. This is not because some harsh cosmic judge is punishing careless words. It is simply because the subconscious mind, being utterly literal, cannot tell the difference between a passing complaint and a solemn vow. Both are received the same way, both are planted the same way. So this fourth key asks you to become, gently and without strain, a careful listener to your own small sentences, not only the grand morning declaration, but the little murmurs threaded all through the day, because each one is still a seed, dropped into the very same rich and obedient soil. So this fourth key, taken as a whole, asks you to notice not only that you speak, but how specifically and how confidently you speak. Vague, hopeful murmurs plant vague, hopeful harvests. Clear, grateful claims plant clear, abundant harvests. The soil is not the problem. The soil is perfect, willing, endlessly patient, endlessly obedient. The soil has never once failed to grow exactly what was placed within it. The seed alone, this key reminds you, is entirely, completely up to you. The fifth key is this, and it is a tender one, so let us walk through it slowly. There is an old self within many of us that wakes each morning, already convinced of lack, already bracing for shortage, already rehearsing the identity of the one who struggles, the one who barely gets by, the one for whom money is always tight. Florence Scovel Shinn spoke often about the false sense of self we build over years of repeated thought and repeated circumstance, and she taught that this false self must be allowed to fall away entirely so that the true self, the one made in the image of unlimited supply, can stand forward and be seen. Now here is where we must be very careful and very clear. When this teaching speaks of that old identity dying, it does not mean anything literal. It does not mean the body. It does not mean the person you love. It means only this: the false belief that you are the sum of your bank statements, the false belief that your worth is measured by your current circumstance, the false belief that lack is simply who you are. That belief, and only that belief, is being asked to dissolve, so that the real you, whole, provided for, made of the same substance as the supply itself, can finally live undisturbed. Think of how a caterpillar does not lose itself when it becomes a wing. It only loses the shape that could no longer hold what it was becoming. This is the shape of the fifth key. Waking each morning is an invitation to let the old identity of struggle stay asleep in the bed while the true self rises. Let us make this very plain, with an ordinary morning. Imagine a man named in no particular way, someone very much like many of us, who has spent 15 years quietly calling himself the one who is not good with money. He did not choose this label with cruelty toward himself. He simply absorbed it. A difficult season in his 20s, a few missed payments, a family story repeated at holiday tables about how money never stays in this family long. And slowly, without ever deciding it on purpose, he became the character in that story. So now each morning his eyes open, and before anything else has happened, before the day has offered a single fact, his mind reaches for the familiar robe of that old identity and puts it on the way a person puts on yesterday's clothes without even looking at them. He thinks, here we go again, another month of barely making it, and he has not yet even reached for his phone. He has not yet seen a single number. He has simply dressed himself once more in a self that was never actually true, only repeated. Notice this carefully, because Florence Scovel Shinn was precise about it. The self that says, I am not good with money, is not a fact about him. It is a costume he has worn so long he mistook it for skin. And this is exactly what the fifth key asks us to see clearly, that the false self is never the truth of who we are. It is only a garment stitched together from old fear, old comparison, and old repeated words. And garments, however old, however familiar, can always be taken off. So picture this same man learning the fifth key. Picture him waking the very next morning, and, before the old robe can even be reached for, whispering instead, that self of not enough is not who I am. I am not the old self of lack. That self has no more power over me. I rise today as the true self, made whole, made rich, made complete. At first, this may feel almost like a lie to him, because the old identity is loud. It has 15 years of evidence stacked neatly in its favor. Missed payments, tight months, worried conversations, all of it seeming to prove the old story true. But Florence Scovel Shinn taught something remarkable here. She taught that evidence built on old words simply proves old words. It does not have to remain the evidence of tomorrow. The 15 years of proof were never proof of who he actually is. They were only proof of what he had been declaring, quietly, faithfully, morning after morning, without even realizing declaration was what he was doing. So when he begins instead to declare the true self awake, he is not fighting against reality. He is simply changing which self is doing the speaking. And the moment the speaking changes, the evidence, in time, must follow the new speaker rather than the old one. This is why Florence Scovel Shinn was so gentle and so insistent that this letting go must never be done with shame or with force. We do not slam the door on the old self. We do not curse it. We do not scold ourselves for having worn it so long. We simply, lovingly, let it stay behind in the dark, the way we let a tired guest finally go home to rest after a long visit. You do not need to argue with a guest to see them out. You simply open the door, thank them for what they came to teach, and let them go. In the same way, each morning offers a doorway, and the old identity of lack, the one who worries, the one who apologizes for asking, the one who flinches at every bill, is simply invited to stay resting, while someone new, someone truer, walks out into the day instead. This is not denial of a real person. It is the retiring of a false description that person had been carrying. The way a worn-out job title might finally be retired once someone has grown far beyond it. And here is something many students of this teaching report almost immediately, and it is worth naming plainly. They say they feel lighter within days, not because every bill has instantly vanished, though many circumstances do shift with surprising speed, but because the exhausting work of maintaining an identity of lack has finally been laid down. Think of how much quiet effort it takes to keep proving a story true. The sighing at the checkout, the bracing before opening the mail, the careful rehearsal of complaints so that others will understand how hard things are. All of that is labor, invisible, constant labor, spent shoring up a self that was never even accurate to begin with. When that labor is finally released, of course there is lightness. It is the same lightness anyone would feel setting down a heavy bag they had been carrying so long they forgot it could be put down at all. You no longer have to defend the story of not enough. You no longer have to perform the role of the one who struggles. That role has been retired, and the true self, unhurried, unafraid, and deeply supplied, has been given the stage at last. So this fifth key gently asks you, each and every morning, before the day has fully arrived, to notice which self is speaking first inside you. Is it the old familiar voice reaching for yesterday's worry, the way a hand reaches for a light switch in the dark without even thinking? Or is it the true self, the one Florence Scovel Shinn called the God self within, quietly waiting for permission to rise? And when you notice the old voice beginning its familiar complaint, you do not need to fight it. You do not need to silence it harshly. You simply, with warmth, let it fall quiet. The way morning light does not battle the darkness. It simply arrives. And the darkness, having no true substance of its own to defend, simply is not there anymore. This is the gentle power folded inside the fifth key, that the false self was never strong, it was only unquestioned, and the moment it is lovingly seen for what it is, a costume, a story, a repeated habit of thought, and nothing more, it loosens its grip entirely, and the true self, the one already whole, already provided for, already one with infinite supply, steps forward to greet the day exactly as it was always meant to. The sixth key is this, that the decree must be dressed in the specific clothing of your actual day. Florence Scovel Shinn was famous among her students for never allowing vague, generic prayers to stand alone. She wanted decrees that named the exact situation and then filled that exact situation with supply, because a prayer without a name attached to it is like a letter addressed to no one. It may be full of beautiful sentiment, but it has nowhere definite to arrive. So instead of a general morning statement about abundance floating somewhere out in the sky, she taught her students to look at the actual shape of the day ahead, the calendar sitting on the counter, the envelope waiting on the desk, the appointment already circled in red, and speak directly into it, not around it, not near it, but directly into the middle of it. If there is a bill due Thursday, the decree names it. This bill is paid in full with ease and with grace, and there is more left over than I expected. If there is a meeting today about a raise or a new position, the decree names it. This meeting unfolds in perfect right action, and I receive news that blesses me beyond what I imagined. If there is simply the ordinary running of a household, groceries, gas, small unexpected costs, the decree still names them. Every need of this day, seen and unseen, is already met in abundant supply. Let us slow down here for a moment and really feel why this matters so much, because it would be easy to hear this key and think it is only a small technical adjustment, a minor detail of phrasing. But Florence Scovel Shinn treated it as one of the most practical hinges the whole teaching swings on. Think of a woman standing in her kitchen on a Tuesday morning, coffee in hand, staring at 3 envelopes on the counter. One is the electric bill, one is a note from her daughter's school about a field trip fee, one is simply the receipt from yesterday's groceries, reminding her how quickly the week's budget is thinning. If this woman speaks only a general morning phrase, something like, "I know abundance is mine," and then walks out the door, she has spoken something lovely, but she has spoken it into the air, not into the envelopes. The vague word floats pleasantly overhead, while the actual, specific need sits untouched on the counter, waiting. But if instead she pauses, looks directly at each envelope, and says, "This electric bill is paid in full, this field trip fee is provided for completely, and there is more than enough left over for anything else this week requires," she has done something entirely different. She has taken the wand and pointed it exactly where the need is standing, rather than waving it generally toward the ceiling. Florence Scovel Shinn often compared this to the difference between a farmer who walks out into a field and simply hopes something good grows somewhere, and a farmer who walks the rows, kneels at each one, and plants a particular seed into a particular furrow. Both farmers may love the land equally, both may have equal faith in growth itself, but only one of them will have a harvest that matches an actual need, because the field does not organize itself. The planting must be specific for the harvest to be specific. This is exactly how she taught her students to treat the subconscious mind when it came to money. It is rich soil, endlessly willing, endlessly obedient, but it cannot read your unspoken hopes. It can only work with what you have actually said, and so a decree that stays general, that never gets around to naming the rent, the tuition, the repair bill, the specific dollar figure staring up from the table, leaves the soil holding nothing to grow. There is another layer to this key worth walking through slowly, and it is the question of feeling foolish, saying something so precise before it has happened. Many of Florence Scovel Shinn's students confessed this same hesitation. They could bring themselves to whisper a soft, general hope, something safely vague like, "Things will get better," but naming the exact sum, naming the exact meeting, naming the exact outcome felt suddenly too bold, almost embarrassing, as though they might be caught overreaching. But she gently corrected this fear, again and again. She taught that vagueness is not humility. Vagueness is simply unclaimed territory. and unclaimed territory has no owner, so it remains open to be filled by whatever thought is loudest, usually worry. Whereas a specific decree, spoken quietly and with steadiness rather than desperation, is simply an act of ownership. It says, I know exactly what this day requires, and I have already claimed it filled. This is not arrogance toward the universe, it is partnership with it. Florence Scovel Shinn once told of a woman who needed a very specific sum for rent by a certain date, and rather than praying generally for money, she began each morning declaring the exact figure paid in full, with gratitude already present as though it were already accomplished. She did not say a large amount of money is coming, she said the number itself, spoken plainly, spoken calmly, and within days, through a channel she had not expected, an old debt owed to her was suddenly repaid, in the very amount required, not more, not less, precisely the figure she had named. This is the pattern again and again throughout this teaching. The specific decree draws the specific supply, through channels open or closed, known or unknown, expected or entirely surprising, because true supply does not travel only through the channels we can currently see, it moves through the whole universe of substance looking for any opening at all, and a named need gives it something exact to aim for. Think also of how this key changes the smaller, quieter corners of an ordinary week, not only the large rent payments or dramatic emergencies, but the little running costs of daily life, the car that needs gas, the child who needs new shoes, the unexpected copay at the pharmacy. Most people never think to speak specifically over these small things. They simply grumble their way through them, or pay them with a sigh. But Florence Scovel Shinn taught that no need is too small to be named, and filled with the same confident decree. This fills every corner of the day with intention, so that supply is not only summoned for the large dramatic moments, but woven quietly through the ordinary hours as well. Gas money is already provided for. Shoes for my child are already provided for. This small, unexpected cost is already covered completely. Said this way, nothing in the day is left unclaimed. Nothing is left to chance or worry. Every corner has already been spoken over. So this sixth key asks you, before your feet even reach the floor, to run through the actual shape of your day. Not a vague impression of the day, but its real, particular contents. The bill, the meeting, the appointment, the errand, the small forgotten cost tucked into the afternoon, and to speak supply directly into each one by name, not as a hope floating somewhere in the air above you, but as a decree landing exactly where it is needed, addressed, delivered, and already received. The seventh key is this, that gratitude spoken before the proof arrives is the very mechanism by which the proof is drawn forward. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that thanksgiving is a magnet, that it does not wait politely at the back of the line for evidence to show up first. It walks straight to the front of the line and claims its place before anything visible has changed. This can feel almost countercultural, because most of us have been trained our whole lives to feel grateful only after we receive something. The raise arrives, then we say thank you. The bill gets paid, then we feel relief. The check clears, then we finally exhale. But Florence Scovel Shinn flipped this order entirely. She taught her students to say thank you first. Thank you while the bill is still sitting unpaid on the table. Thank you while the job has not yet been offered. Thank you while the bank balance still shows the old discouraging number. Because gratitude spoken in advance is a statement of such confident faith that the subconscious mind, and the great supply itself, cannot help but move to make it true. Let us slow down and really feel why this works. When you wait to be grateful until after the proof appears, you are quietly telling your own consciousness that lack is the truth right now, and supply is only a maybe. a someday, a hope hovering somewhere out past the horizon. But when you give thanks before the proof appears, you are telling your consciousness the opposite. You are saying, supply is the truth right now, and the outer proof is simply a formality, still making its way toward you. This single shift in order changes everything about the vibration you send out. And remember, Florence Scovel Shinn always taught that vibration returns loaded with its own likeness. Think for a moment of an ordinary household on an ordinary Tuesday. Picture a woman standing at her kitchen counter early in the morning, the coffee not even finished brewing yet, and on the counter beside her sits a stack of envelopes she has been quietly dreading opening all week. One is the electric bill, one is a note from the school about a fee due, one is simply the number she keeps in her head about how thin things feel this month. In the old pattern, she would pick up each envelope with a small sigh, maybe even before opening it, already bracing for the total, already speaking silently. Here we go again. Always something. But imagine instead she pauses before touching a single envelope, and she says quietly, "Thank you. Thank you that every need represented in this stack is already met. Thank you that supply has already gone before me into each of these situations." She has not yet opened one envelope. Nothing on the counter has visibly changed, and yet something inside her has changed completely. Her shoulders drop. Her breath softens. She opens the mail now, not as a woman inspecting a verdict, but as a woman confirming a fact she has already settled within herself. This is the entire heart of the seventh key. The thank you comes first, and the peace it produces becomes the very atmosphere in which supply can move freely toward her. Florence Scovel Shinn often described gratitude in exactly these terms, not as a polite afterthought, not as good manners toward the universe, but as an active force, a kind of spiritual currency spent in advance that the unseen substance recognizes and answers. She would remind her students that hope always carries a small undertone of strain within it. Hope says, "I want this to happen, but I am not fully sure it will," and that undertone of uncertainty, however faint, still transmits itself outward. But gratitude spoken ahead of the evidence carries no such undertone. Gratitude says, "This is already so, and I am simply pausing to acknowledge it." There is no strain in that sentence at all, only settledness. And Florence Scovel Shinn taught again and again that supply moves easily and swiftly toward a settled, peaceful consciousness, while it moves slowly, if at all, toward a strained and anxious one. So in a very real sense, the advance thank you is not decoration around the decree. It is part of the decree's very engine. Consider how this looks across different corners of an ordinary week. Instead of waiting to feel thankful, only once the rent is confirmed paid, you whisper thank you the moment you wake, long before the transaction ever happens. Instead of feeling gratitude only after the interview goes well, you say thank you the night before. Thank you that the right words will be given at the right moment. Instead of feeling relief only once the doctor's bill is settled, you say thank you while it still sits open on the desk. In each case, you are not denying what the paper in front of you currently says. You are simply refusing to let that paper have the final word before the greater truth of supply has had its chance to speak first. There is a story often shared from this very teaching of a woman deeply behind on her expenses who was taught a simple daily practice to walk slowly through her own small apartment each morning, touching different objects as she passed them: the stove, the table, the doorframe, the edge of the sink, and quietly saying thank you for the abundance already prepared for her. Prepared, notice, not someday coming, but already prepared. She did this faithfully, day after day, long before anything outwardly appeared to shift. No sudden windfall arrived in the first week, no dramatic sign in the second, and yet she continued, because she had been taught that the thank you is not a reaction to results. It is itself the quiet work being done in the unseen. And within a relatively short season, small provisions and unexpected repayments began arriving from more than one direction at once. None of them from the place she had been anxiously watching. This is so often how supply moves, not through the door we are staring at, but through some side door we forgot we ever left open. Because true supply, once gratitude has cleared the path for it, has the whole of substance available to travel through, not merely the one channel our worried mind keeps checking. This is the seventh key in its plainest and most livable form. Do not wait for the proof to say thank you. Say thank you, and watch the proof arrive as the natural consequence of a consciousness that has already made peace with abundance. So tomorrow morning, before your feet touch the floor, before you check the accounts, before you read a single message waiting on your phone, simply whisper, "Thank you," for the supply already moving toward you. Let it be unhurried. Let it be unforced. Let it be spoken the way you would thank someone for a gift you have not yet unwrapped but already trust is beautiful. And let that quiet gratitude be the very hand that reaches out and draws the whole of it in vain. The eighth key is this, that the state claimed at dawn must be guarded, gently but firmly, through every single hour that follows. It is not enough. Florence Scovel Shinn taught to speak beautifully for 60 seconds after waking and then hand the rest of the day over to whatever mood, headline, or stray comment happens to cross your path afterward. The morning word plants the seed, yes, but the hours that follow are the watering, and a seed planted in faith at sunrise can be flooded right back out by an afternoon of careless, anxious talk. So let us walk slowly through what this actually looks like in an ordinary day, because this key is lived out not in grand, dramatic moments, but in the small, easily missed ones. Picture a woman who wakes and speaks her claim with real feeling. I am one with infinite supply. My morning thought commands my whole day. She feels the peace of it settle over her while she is still lying in bed. She carries that peace into her shower, into her coffee, out the door, and for the first hour of the day it holds beautifully. But then she gets to her desk, and a coworker leans over and sighs. Did you see the prices at the pump this morning? It is getting ridiculous out there. And without even noticing it, she nods and says, "Tell me about it. Everything is out of control." In that single exchange, without any malice, without any awareness, she has quietly set down the very claim she made only an hour earlier. She has let the fence around her morning seed fall open, and something wanders in and tramples what she planted. This is not a story about a bad person or a weak person. This is simply the ordinary pull every single one of us feels throughout an ordinary day. Because the world around us is constantly offering invitations to agree with lack. And agreement, Florence Scovel Shinn taught, is one of the most powerful forces there is. Whatever we agree with, we invite in. Now picture the same woman, later that same morning, receiving a notification on her phone about rising costs somewhere in the economy. The temptation is to let her attention lock onto it, to feel her stomach tighten, to silently rehearse, "This affects me too, this means less for me too." But instead, because she has been taught this key, she pauses for one breath and quietly repeats inwardly, "My supply is not governed by outer conditions. My supply flows from a source that never runs dry." She does not argue with the headline. She does not deny that prices exist. She simply refuses to let the headline become her personal decree for the day. This is the guarding this key speaks of, not pretending the outer world does not exist, but refusing to let the outer world write your inner sentence for you. Florence Scovel Shinn compared this kind of guarding to keeping a garden fenced against wandering animals, and it is worth staying with that picture a moment longer, because a fence around a garden is never built once and then forgotten forever. A wise gardener checks the fence in the morning, checks it again at midday, and checks it once more before evening, not because the fence is weak, but because there are always small creatures moving through the world looking for an opening. So it is with the state you claim at dawn. There will be a phone call from someone who wants to talk you into their fear. There will be a bill arriving in the mail that looks larger than expected. There will be a passing thought of your own, unbidden, whispering, "Are you sure this is really working?" None of these moments mean the fence has failed. They simply mean the fence needs tending again. Right there, in that moment, and tending it is remarkably simple. It is only ever a returning, a gentle turning back to the words you spoke before your feet touched the floor. Think of a man driving home after a long day. The radio is playing, and the announcer begins listing all the ways the cost of living has climbed again this year. In years past, this man would have arrived home already irritated, already speaking lack over his own kitchen table before he even sat down to dinner. But now, having learned to guard his state, he simply reaches over and turns the volume down, not in denial, but in loyalty to the claim he made that morning, and he says quietly to himself, "Whatever the world reports, my house is provided for, my family is provided for, I am one with infinite supply." This is such a small act, turning a dial, lowering a volume, and yet it is the exact shape of guarding the state. It is choosing, moment by moment, which voice gets to keep speaking into your consciousness. Florence Scovel Shinn often reminded her students that the subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between a fact you are simply observing and a fact you are agreeing with. This is why guarding the state matters so much. Because every time you nod along with someone else's fear, every time you let a headline become your own private decree, you are handing your own soil a seed you did not intend to plant. But every time you notice the pull and quietly return to your morning word, you are proving to your own consciousness that you are in charge of what gets planted there. And that proof, repeated across days and weeks, becomes an unshakable habit of guarding, until it requires almost no effort at all, until it simply becomes who you are. There is great mercy folded into this key, because it does not demand that you never notice a worried thought all day long. It does not ask you to be some flawless being who feels no pull toward fear whatsoever. It only asks that when you notice the pull, you gently, without shame, without scolding yourself, return, and return again if needed. This returning, done patiently, hour after hour, is what allows the fragile morning seed to survive all the way to harvest. A seed left utterly alone in hostile weather rarely makes it to fruit, but a seed tended faithfully, even imperfectly, across the changing weather of an ordinary day, grows steadily toward the very thing it was planted to become. So this eighth key, in its heart, is wonderfully simple. Let your morning word be the compass you keep returning to, all day long, no matter how many small winds try to blow you off course. The co-worker's sigh, the flashing notification, the radio announcer's list of troubles, the unbidden worried thought at your own kitchen table. None of these have to become your decree. They are simply weather passing through, and you, holding your morning word like a lantern carried steadily down a long hallway of many doors, only ever need to keep walking, keep returning, keep speaking the claim of supply quietly over your own day, until evening finds you exactly where dawn left you, standing in the truth that you are one with infinite supply. The ninth key is this, and it completes the whole circle. that the wand in your hand is never meant to serve you alone. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that true supply is never a private treasure hoarded from others. It is a river, and rivers are meant to flow through, not to be dammed up and kept still. So once your morning words have set your own day in order, once your own claim of supply has been spoken, the ninth key asks you to extend that same spoken blessing outward, toward the very people you will meet before your feet even touch the floor in memory. The cashier who will ring up your groceries later, the co-worker who seems perpetually stressed about money, the family member who has been quietly struggling. Speak supply over them too, silently, generously, without needing credit or acknowledgement. Florence Scovel Shinn often said that blessing another person's supply does not diminish your own. In the economy of true substance, there is no competition, no limited pie being divided into smaller and smaller pieces. There is only ever more. So declaring abundance for someone else costs you nothing and returns to you multiplied, because the very words that leave your mouth on behalf of another travel first through you and cannot help but bless you as they pass. Imagine speaking, before this day begins, over your household, over your workplace, over the strangers you will pass. Supply flows abundantly to everyone I meet today, and let no one I encounter go without what they truly need. This is not naive. This is not ignoring practical wisdom. This is simply widening the channel that supply moves through, because a wand waved only for the self grows tired and small over time, but a wand waved generously for others grows stronger and wider with every use. There is an old truth Florence Scovel Shinn returned to often, that what we wish for another, we are simultaneously building into our own consciousness. So the person who daily blesses others with thoughts of provision is daily building, brick by brick, a consciousness so saturated with the reality of supply that lack can hardly find a foothold anywhere within it. Let me walk you through an ordinary morning so you can see exactly how this looks in practice. Picture a man standing at his kitchen counter pouring coffee, his own claim already spoken, his own day already blessed, and now his teenage daughter walks in worried aloud about money for a school trip. In the old pattern, he might sigh along with her, might say something like, "Well, we will see. Money is tight right now." And without knowing it, he has just waved the wand backward, planting her worry deeper instead of lifting it. But under this ninth key, he pauses, and silently, without making a speech of it, without even needing her to know, he simply holds the thought. Supply meets my daughter fully. Her way is already made clear. And then perhaps he says aloud, gently, "We will find a way. I am not worried." Notice what happened there. Nothing outwardly dramatic. No lecture, no sermon, just a redirected word, spoken first inwardly. And that single redirected word did two things at once. It blessed her, and it deepened his own consciousness of supply having no limit. This is the quiet, almost invisible way the ninth key is lived, not through grand public declarations, but through 1,000 small, silent blessings tucked inside the ordinary motions of a day. The drive to work becomes an opportunity as you pass cars at the stoplight, as you walk past strangers on the sidewalk, to simply think, supply meets you too, without ever needing to say a word aloud. The workplace becomes an opportunity, when a co-worker mentions they are behind on bills, to silently bless their supply, even while listening kindly, without absorbing their fear as your own. The checkout line becomes an opportunity, as you watch the cashier scan item after item, to quietly think, may abundance find you exactly where you are. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that this kind of silent blessing is one of the purest forms of prayer there is, because it asks for nothing in return. It simply releases goodwill into the great substance that connects every person to the same one source. And here is something remarkable she noticed again and again among her students. the ones who practiced blessing others most freely, were consistently the very ones whose own circumstances improved most steadily. Not because blessing others is a clever transaction, not because you are secretly performing a trick to get supply back to yourself, but because the very act of blessing another rearranges your own inner state into one of abundance rather than scarcity. And it is always the inner state, never the outer performance of words, that supply responds to. A person cannot truly hold the thought supply flows to everyone I meet, while simultaneously believing supply is scarce and must be protected only for themselves. The two beliefs cannot occupy the same consciousness at once. So practicing the ninth key actually strengthens every other key that came before it. It is the proof, in a way, that the earlier claims have taken root, because a consciousness truly convinced of its own unlimited supply finds it easy, even natural, to wish the same freely upon others, while a consciousness still secretly gripped by lack will always feel a flinch, a hesitation, a small tightening at the thought of blessing someone else's finances. So let this key also become a gentle diagnostic for you. Notice, the next time you hear of someone else's raise, someone else's unexpected gift, someone else's good fortune, what rises in you first? If envy or comparison rises, that is simply the old identity of lack still lingering, asking again to be let go. But if genuine gladness rises, if you find yourself thinking, wonderful, and there is more where that came from for me too, you are standing fully in the consciousness this whole practice has been building toward. And so this ninth key closes the circle that the first key opened. The day began with words spoken for yourself alone, and now the day is offered outward, blessing the very world you are about to walk into. Before your feet ever touch the floor, you have already claimed your own supply, and you have already released supply toward everyone your day will bring you close to. And this, more than any other single practice, is what Florence Scovel Shinn called living as a fully awakened spender and receiver in the one true economy of infinite supply. Here is the whole picture, drawn back together in a single breath. Before your feet touch the floor, you guard the first 60 seconds like a newborn flame. You remember the tongue is the wand, and aim it towards supply rather than lack. You claim the answer before the evidence. You plant clear and specific seeds into soil that cannot help but obey. You let the old identity of struggle stay asleep, while the true self rises. You name the actual bills and meetings and errands of your day and fill each one with supply by name. You say thank you long before the proof appears, and let that gratitude pull the proof toward you. You guard that claimed state through every hour, with gentle, repeated return, and finally you widen the whole practice outward, blessing every person your day will bring across your path. This is the full shape of the practice Florence Scovel Shinn lived by, morning after morning, and it is the shape now placed fully into your hands. If this has stirred something steady and warm in you tonight, if you are ready not just to hear these keys but to walk them daily with real support, we have built something for exactly this season of your life. It is called the Overflow Covenant, and it is a gentle daily walk through these very principles, morning declarations written in this same spirit, guided practices for guarding your state through the hours, and a community of others speaking supply over one another, the way the ninth key describes. It exists simply to help these words become your daily rhythm, rather than a single video watched once and set aside. If you feel called to go deeper, the invitation is open. Come as you are, your consciousness exactly where it stands right now, and let us build the daily practice of infinite supply together. Let us close now the way we began, together. Say it with me once more. I am one with infinite supply. My morning thought commands my whole day. My word is my wand. Again, I am one with infinite supply. My morning thought commands my whole day. My word is my wand. So tomorrow, before your feet ever touch the floor, remember this. Money has always been listening for the first words of the day. Let them be words worthy of the supply that has been waiting, all along, to answer you